About a year and a half ago, right before the Shabbos project, I decided to create a video that would show how one can invite people to the Shabbos project through Shabbat.com. I hired a video crew. They came after Shabbos and they shot some gorgeous footage of what Shabbos in a home looks like. I was really happy with the footage, and we put together sort of like an infomercial showing how to use Shabbat.com to invite people. And I really thought that this video would go viral. Unfortunately, it didn't. We had about 6,000 people who watched it, which is something, but certainly not what I had intended. However, the footage was really, really beautiful, and I wanted to do something with it. So I took the same footage that we had just shot, and I reorganized it and just made it into a nice video all about Shabbos. And I put it on YouTube, and I titled it, "The Most Beautiful Shabbos Video Ever." Well, thankfully, that video did go viral, and we have about 250,000 people who have watched that video. And I was really happy. What a nice way to show the world what Shabbos looks like. This past week, I was looking at YouTube, and I saw that one of the thumbnails was an image from the Most Beautiful Shabbos Video Ever video, but it was not put out by us. So I clicked on it, and I realized that it was put out by a mega church that was there to try to tell people to convert to Christianity, and that only through Yashka can one be saved. And they used about 2 minutes of the footage from my video. I was really steamed about that, particularly because I myself am in the video, and I don't want to be promoting Christianity. It's not what I do. I'm a rabbi. So I contacted YouTube, and I told YouTube, we have to have a cease and desist. They have to take down the video. They cannot use my footage to promote Christianity. That's not why the Shabbos footage, the Shabbos video was made, and they did not ask my permission. And if they had, I wouldn't have given it. I was thinking that the image or the imagery was really so beautiful, and yet the soundtrack that they put behind it was not the soundtrack that we put, but instead it was gospel, it was Christianity, it was missionizing soundtrack instead of the soundtrack that we had put in. And I realized that sometimes an image can look holy, and yet the soundtrack behind it is absolutely not. In this past parsha that we just read, the Jewish people were commanded to slaughter a lamb and take the blood of the lamb, which was the idol to the Egyptians, and put it on their doorposts. And the Almighty said that any house that has the blood of the lamb on the doorpost will not be smitten by that last plague, the death of the firstborn. Now, you'd have to imagine that some Egyptians, after 9 plagues, already understood that if the Jewish people are doing something, it's probably a good thing. They probably are doing it to be saved from a plague. And you'd have to imagine that some Egyptians also took either the blood of a lamb, or if they didn't because it was their god, some other blood, and put it on their doorposts in order to be saved. Did it work? It absolutely did not. The Torah says that in every single Egyptian house, there was at least one person who had died. They were not saved by mimicking the Jews. You know why? Because although the footage was the same, the imagery looked like blood on a doorpost, but the soundtrack inside the house was completely different. The soundtrack by the Jewish people was a Pesach Seder. And by the Egyptians, it was an Egyptian household with many gods, cruelty. It was just not the same soundtrack. The image was the same, the soundtrack was different. And then I was thinking, we each live our lives doing similar things if we are Jewish, and if we are trying to accomplish and grow in our Judaism. We'll try to do Shabbat, we'll try to do kosher on whatever level that we can. We go to a synagogue, we give tzedakah, we go through the motions, and yet we each have a soundtrack that's playing behind those motions. And it's that soundtrack that creates the music that infuses the imagery with meaning and authenticity. And I was thinking, what is my soundtrack? When I go through the mitzvahs, what is my soundtrack? Is it Modani Lefanecha Melech Avakem? I love you, Almighty. Thank you for everything that you do. Is it without thinking at all? Is the sound turned so low that I can't even hear the soundtrack? Am I playing the song so many times that it's background music and no longer inspires me? We each have a soundtrack. And it's really important to identify what is the soundtrack to our lives that help us wake up in the morning and decide to live lives of meaning and greatness. And it goes one step further. You know, there was a movie called The Prince of Egypt. And in The Prince of Egypt, when the Jewish people are saved after the death of the firstborn, so the Jewish people, they peek out of their houses to see, is the coast clear? Are we actually saved? And as they leave their houses, this song wells up in them until by the time they're marching out of Egypt, there's this beautiful musical number in the movie, and they're marching out of Egypt with a song. The truth of the matter is, it's not completely accurate. The song actually came after the Egyptians were seen dead on the other side of the sea, after the sea had closed up on them. That's when Shira began, and that's in this week's Parsha. That musical number began when they were totally safe. But the movie was not completely incorrect. You see, the way that Shira works, the way that song works, is that the musical number that plays inside of us, that gives us joy, that gives us meaning, sometimes is jolted by what we see, is inspired by what we hear or what we experience, to the point that it bursts forth in a way that it can no longer be contained. Picture Jiffy Pop. You know that popcorn, you put it on the stove and you wait a few seconds and then you hear a little pop, 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 until there is so much popping going on that it breaks the silver foil, breaks the tin foil, and it becomes a big mound of popcorn. Now, I don't know if Jiffy Pop is kosher, but in the imagery of what Jiffy Pop is, or if you'd rather, the magma that's inside of a volcano that is simmering and boiling until it bursts forth and the volcano erupts. In that same way, we have music inside of us, and that Shira that happens occasionally but oh so beautifully, that happens not because all of a sudden we're moved to sing. It's that all of a sudden the song that we always had inside of us, that played and inspired us, that melody, that tune, it bursts forth and we just have to dance in the streets. That's what Shira is. But Shira only works, that moment of inspiration where we burst out into song, that only works if A, we have a soundtrack that's playing, and B, that soundtrack is synced up to our actions. So, I have a little message for you. Think about your soundtrack. Is it a song? Is it gratefulness? Is it beauty? Is it thankfulness? Whatever that song is, sing it, play it. You don't have to carry a tune. You could sing just because inside of you, music, those vibrating strings that are the building blocks of the universe, that beautiful, beautiful music, it's inside of each and every one of us. What is your song today? What is your song constantly? Is it time to change that song? Is the song one of sadness? And we have to sort of like change the track, change the channel, because that sad, mournful song doesn't help you accomplish. If you take a song and you take your actions and you sync them together in a way that you float through life, you tap dance through your day saying, you know what, I'm so happy, I'm so grateful, then every one of your actions will be one of holiness, and it will sync together, and it won't be that like that YouTube video where on one hand you see a holy Shabbos, and on the other hand you hear a soundtrack and you say, whoa, 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 stop. this is not speaking to me, this just doesn't make any sense. But instead it'll make a lot of sense. And then when we do have questions, we could fall back on the song and say, you know what, my actions sometimes are a little bit shaky. I'm a human being. Sometimes I trip up and fall. But the music is consistent. The joy is real. And it's going to help me get back in sync with my actions and help me live a beautiful, wonderful life. Thank you so much for watching.